All right, today we're tackling a hypothesis that is, well, incredibly ambitious. It tries to draw a straight line from subatomic particles all the way to how you hold your hands. It connects the math of fractals to the sound of ancient music. It is a wild journey that tries to bridge the entire cosmos with our own consciousness. So let's just jump right in. So let's start with that really big question. What if all these things were connected? It's the question right at the heart of a paper by researcher Harminder Singh. He's proposing a brand new framework for pretty much everything. It's this really bold attempt to weave together fields that, seem totally unrelated into one single story of the universe. So yeah, a theory of everything. Our goal here is to unpack this single, very dense hypothesis that claims to link the entire cosmos to human consciousness. It's a big one, so let's get into it. Okay, so to even begin to get our heads around this theory, we have to learn its unique language. And that starts with what the author calls the foundational sequence for life itself. According to the hypothesis, it all starts with this causal chain. First, you have neutrinos, those tiny, ghost-like particles that are passing through you right now. Then, they get tangled up with these other hypothetical particles called axions. And the theory goes that their interaction, happening in a void, is what actually gives rise to two-dimensional matter, the literal building block for everything else. Now, at the very center of this theory is something called the Philfo particle. You can think of it as the master particle, the one that governs the fundamental streams of light, sound, and vibration. The author also calls it a grace particle, which pulls from spiritual tradition. And the name Philfo? It's a mashup of philosophy and self, which kind of tells you its whole purpose, to connect the physical universe with our own inner awareness. So if the Philfo particle is this fundamental stream of energy, then the Janus particle is the gate. And just like the two-faced Roman god of doorways it's named after, this particle is proposed to be a kind of cosmic gatekeeper. It can either lock or unlock the flow of that fundamental energy. A really key force in all of this is something called cymatics, which is the study of how vibration literally shapes matter. If you've ever seen those videos of sand making incredible patterns on a vibrating metal plate, that's cymatics. Well, in this theory, it's not just some cool experiment. It's a fundamental creative force of the universe, shaping everything into the building blocks of life. And last but not least, we have the Psychon. This is the proposed fundamental particle of consciousness itself, and it's said to emerge from that very same mix of neutrinos and axions. Okay, I know, that was a whole new dictionary of terms, but these ideas, the sequence, the energy particle, its gatekeeper, and the force that shapes it, they are the essential building blocks we need. With this new language in mind, let's see how the theory applies it to something a little more familiar, us. This is where it all gets really personal. The theory argues that these abstract cosmic forces aren't just floating out there in space somewhere. No, they are mapped directly onto our own bodies, our own anatomy. First up, the theory frames the human body as a biomagnet. The idea here is that we're not separate from our planet. We are fundamentally connected to Earth's own electromagnetic and thermal energies, linking our own biology directly to the planet's geology. And it gets way more specific. The hypothesis proposes that our heads actually emit neutrinos. This comes from the natural decay of potassium-40, which is a radioactive element found in our bodies and, in bananas. And the idea is that this process in our heads directly mirrors what's happening deep inside the Earth's core. And it doesn't stop there. The theory then maps these really deep physics concepts onto our bodies. For example, our left and right arms are said to represent chirality. That's the scientific term for the handedness, or the spin direction, of particles like neutrinos and their antimatter twins, antineutrinos. And this all leads to a simple, universal human action: putting your hands together. The paper claims this physical act has a metaphysical result. It proposes that this simple gesture combines different dimensions, which the theory actually assigns to each hand, to unlock those Janus gates we talked about, releasing the Philfo particle's energy. So the theory now argues that physics and biology aren't the only ways to describe this reality. It suggests that things like mathematics and even music are just different languages telling the exact same cosmic story. So according to the author, the math of the universe is written right into our own biology. This slide lists these really famous mathematical concepts that are known for describing incredible complexity and beauty, like Mandelbrot sets,
the ones that create those infinite, trippy fractal patterns. The theory proposes that the very geometry of life follows these same elegant mathematical rules.
And this is where things get really, really interesting. The theory actually links fundamental particles directly to specific musical instruments from Sikh and Indian classical traditions. So the neutrino is compared to the rabab, the axion to the tabla, and the void to the harmonium.
And to give these analogies some weight, the author traces the specific historical origins for each instrument. It's an attempt to show that there's this deep historical connection between spiritual music and the very structure of the universe that the theory is proposing.
Okay, so after all of this, connecting particles, bodies, music, and math, you're probably asking yourself, so what? What's the point? Well, the author proposes that this model isn't just a thought experiment. It could actually lead to some major breakthroughs for humanity. And the breakthroughs being proposed here are, well, they're nothing short of revolutionary. The paper suggests this framework could unlock brand new forms of clean energy from neutrinos, help us develop technologies to protect against natural disasters like tsunamis and earthquakes, and ultimately give us a totally unified understanding of our own existence. And that brings us to the final and probably the biggest question of all. How would you even begin to test a theory that claims to connect everything? When a hypothesis includes particles we can't even detect yet and links them to the spiritual act of prayer, it really pushes the boundaries of science itself. So you have to ask yourself, is this a roadmap to a completely new reality? Or is it a beautiful, intricate piece of philosophy, just written in the language of physics?